So at the same time, reality is also viewed by the Baha'i writings in the Quran as consisting of two realms, God and his creation. From this perspective, God is regarded as the creator of the phenomenal world. Carolyn, are you available for us? Number 12.
All praise to the unity of God, and all honor to him, the sovereign Lord, the incomparable and all glorious ruler of the universe, who out of utter nothingness hath created the reality of all things, who from naught hath brought into being the most refined and subtle elements of his creation, and who, rescuing his creatures from the abasement of remoteness and the perils of ultimate extinction, has received them into his kingdom of incorruptible glory. Baha'u'llah gleanings.
Mm-hmm. So this same two-level reality appears in the Quran as well. I'm going to turn to Bill here, if he's available there. And I'd ask you to read 14 and 15 for us, Bill, or 13 and 14. I beg your pardon, I went too fast.
See, God is the creator of all things, and he is the one, the paramount. Praise be to God, originator of the heavens and the earth, increasing creation as he will. Truly, God is powerful over all things.
Okay. As Baha'u'llah explains, this duality is acknowledged by synonyms such as the unmanifest or the invisible on the one hand, and the manifest or the visible, as well as the first and the last on the other hand. Sherry, how about 15? Sorry, you're muted at the moment, Sherry.
Sorry, there was feedback and I muted you, Sherry. Sorry.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Oh.
And when he purposed to manifest his beauty in the kingdom of names and to reveal his glory in the realm of attributes, he brought forth his prophets from the invisible plane to the visible, that his name, the manifest, might be distinguished from the hidden, and his name, the last, might be discerned from the first, and that there may be fulfilled the words, he is the first and the last, the seen and the hidden, and he knoweth all things.
So Mark, do you see that Jack has his hand up?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jack.
Mark, could we go back to reading 11, please? There was a couple of comments I wanted to make there.
Sure.
I'm not sure that Chittick, although he's right on just about everything, I think there's a difference between the names and the attributes. They seem to be in Islam the same thing. But when you think about it, they have to be different because although they're related, I mean, there's two different words here. So the example that comes to mind would be for the names of God, we'll say he's Lord or he's King. So that's his name. But then the attributes, the sifat, they derive from the name. So the attributes are, if you like, the expressions or manifestations of the name. So anyway, I'm just raising that because I've been thinking about it for so many years, trying to figure out the difference. Now, the other thing that I wanted to mention is this, going back to this doctrine of wajat al-wujud, okay, the existence, the oneness of being or the unity of being or existence. Now, the reason the Sufis got into trouble on this and they started believing in pantheism, that everything is God, was because they took that doctrine to extremes. Now, we know the Baha'i faith rejects pantheism, right? It's one of the things that Shoghi Effendi mentions that is not doctrinally orthodox. Okay, so the Sufis figured this way, and Ibn al-Arabi wrote extensively on this greatness of the one being of God. If there's only one reality, namely God, and everything else doesn't exist in relation to God, relatively speaking, then everything that exists must all be God also, if there's only one reality. That's the logic of the thing. If there's only one reality, then, and you recall the story in the Dawnbreakers when Baha'u'llah was out and he stopped by the side of the road, and there was a Sufi, a dervish there cooking his meal, and Baha'u'llah liked this man and said, "Dervish, what are you doing?" He said, "Oh, I'm cooking God." Do you remember that story? "I'm cooking God." He said, "I'm cooking and eating God." Well, this guy was a Sufi and he was a pantheist. So Baha'u'llah was very amused at this and started talking to him, and then of course transformed him, and he left everything by the side of the road and followed Baha'u'llah. But I just wanted to emphasize that how you can slip into pantheism there if you believe, well, in absolute terms, yes, of course, there is nothing but God, of course. But the Sufis got into trouble with this because they took that so seriously that by extension, if there is only God, then everything else has to be God too, logically. That's sort of the error that they fell into, which was, of course, not accepted by Orthodox Muslims. They don't accept pantheism. But anyway, those are just a couple of things I wanted to mention. Thank you.
Okay, and Abdu'l-Baha had a great deal to say about this topic that you've been mentioning, Jack. One of the things that he does is makes it clear that the nature of God is so radically different than any other form of nature that there's no business in people comparing the two. And that's one of the reasons we're focusing on the levels of, or the worlds of God, because they are, as Ibn Arabi talked about it, they're all self-disclosures of his nature, but they are not his nature. And Abdu'l-Baha uses the term emanation to make it clear that the light rays that we're seeing where we're standing on the earth are radically different than the sun, right? They've traveled 93 million miles, right? If we were any closer, they'd burn us to a crisp. So in a nutshell, that's what the Sufis didn't appreciate. And they felt that they used the analogy of the numbering system. The first number is 1. So therefore, it's the source of all the other numbers, just by adding more to it. But the Sufis don't appreciate that 1 isn't part of the numbering system, right? It's so beyond, it transcends it so much that they're completely wrong to think of it that way. And they also use the analogy of the waves of the ocean. So, and the fact that we're going to die and go back to our source, we're going to be absorbed into the ocean. Well, yes and no. So that's one of the reasons for doing this whole course, in fact, is to explore some of the ways that these things are different. What are the levels of manifestation that we have access to? Anyway, I don't want to go on beyond that, but does that help in any way? Okay. So another common pair of synonyms in Islam is the greater and the lesser worlds, which correspond to the modern notions of macrocosm and microcosm. Now, last week I distributed a chart called The Possessors of Two Eyes that was based on Ibn Arabi's thinking. And we listed 7 pairs of terms. And these are all representative of the 2-level model of the cosmos that we're talking about at the moment. Okay, so now it's time to progress to 3 levels. Abdu'l-Baha explained that some Sufis were mistaken when they asserted that there are only 2 levels in the universe, God in his essence and everything other than God, i.e. the world of creation. In the most common Baha'i view, there are in fact 3 worlds. First, God in his essence or divinity. Second, the manifestations of God or prophethood. And 3, creation or servitude. In some answered questions, he pointed to these 3 levels, but in reverse order. Let me see who's up now. How about Bob LeBlanc? Number 16.
Okay. Know that the degrees of existence are finite. The degrees of servitude, of prophethood, and divinity, but that the perfections of God and of creation are infinite. Abdu'l-Baha.
And if you'd hang on, Bob, I'd ask you to read the next one in a minute too. Oh, I think I lost my place. Oh no, there it is. So this 3-level model is by far the most common Baha'i classification of being. As an example, look at how Shoghi Effendi described the image on the Baha'i ringstone. That's number 17.
The inscription on the Baha'i ringstone is symbolic of the 3 planes representing the world of God, the world of revelation, and the world of creation. Shoghi Effendi.
So Abdu'l-Baha patiently explains that a 2-level view of creation is incorrect because it requires that God somehow descend into his own creation. Joey, are you available? This next one's a bit long, but I think you're up to it.
In summary, the Sufis speak only of God and creation and believe that God has resolved himself into and manifested himself through the infinite forms of his creation, even as the sea, which appears in the infinite forms of its waves. These originated and imperfect waves are identical to the pre-existent sea, which is the sum of all the divine perfections. The prophets, however, hold that there are the world of God, the world of the kingdom, and the world of creation. 3 things. The assertion of the Sufis would require that absolute wealth descend into poverty, that the pre-existent be confined to originated forms, and that the very quintessence of power be reflected in the mirror of powerlessness and be subjected to inherent limitations of the contingent world. And this is a self-evident error, for we observe that the reality of man, who is the noblest of all creatures, cannot descend into the reality of animal, that the essence of the animal, which is endowed with the power of sensation, does not abase itself to the degree of the plant, and that the reality of the plant, which is the power of growth, does not degrade itself to the reality of the mineral. Abdu'l-Baha.
So there's a hierarchy here with barriers that cannot be transgressed. So in fairness, we must remember that Ibn Arabi proposed an alternate 3-level three layered scheme consisting of the spiritual, the imaginal, and the corporeal realms. You'll remember that from a couple of weeks ago. These corresponded to light, fire, and clay, and were inhabited respectively by angels, jinn, and the body of Adam. So I want to bring up the, I have to stop the sharing and go back into my other sharing. Sorry, I'm going to bring up 3 levels of existence. There it is. Okay, so here's the Sufi model of Ibn Arabi. So there are the 3 levels: spiritual, imaginal, and corporeal. And the angels are inhabitants of the spiritual. The jinn inhabit the imaginal. The body of Adam, which is a way of saying human beings, are in the corporeal level. So contrast that with the Baha'i model. So instead of saying spiritual, we have God in his essence, which is completely unknowable, which is divinity, according to Abdu'l-Baha. Then there's the manifestations of God, all of them. That is the world of the prophets. And then creation, where the proper attitude is servitude. Okay. So far, so good. Notice that the middle level of the Sufi model, the imaginal realm, is inhabited by the jinn. Now, let me go back to my readings, number 19. So let's see who can talk about this. I'm switching pages. Okay, how about Jack? Can you read this one for us about the jinn?
Yep, that's my name. Jinn are fiery spirits in Islam. Quran 55:15, particularly associated with the desert. While disruptive of human life, they may nevertheless be saved. It was one of the jinn, Iblis, the devil, who refused to obey God in bowing down to Adam, Quran 15:31. However, the jinn may also be of service to humans in performing heavy labors. Okay, Carolyn referred to that earlier, right?
Yep. Maybe
they built the pyramids. Thus, Solomon had an army of them as his helpers. Quran 21:82, 27:17. The
okay.
Oxford, yeah.
So by contrast, Abdu'l-Baha maintains that in the Baha'i view, the middle zone is inhabited by the manifestations of God. He also refers to this intermediate world as the world of the kingdom, Alam al-Malakut. And the other names, are the world of command, the world of revelation, and the kingdom of his cause. Now I got this from an excellent article of Mujan Moments called The God of Baha'u'llah. As Moment observes, the insertion of this realm and the application to it of all those descriptions reserved in other religions for God or for the absolute reality is a distinctive feature of the Baha'i faith. So we'll have more to say about that probably next week. But the Baha'i faith is the only one to lump all of the manifestations of God together in one category, if you like. Okay, so now we get to 5 levels. Baha'u'llah discusses the 5-fold classification of being in considerable detail in the Tablet of All Food, which is only available to us in a provisional translation at the moment. He also mentions this model in passing in the Valley of Unity in the 7 valleys, but there only includes 4 levels. Okay, how about Zilda? I think I saw you at one point.
Though the worlds of God be infinite, yet some refer to them as 4. Others have called these the worlds of the heavenly court, of the celestial dominion, of the divine kingdom, and of mortal existence.
Okay, so now we're going to stop sharing and go back in and see if I can pull up the right one here. Four worlds of God. Now, where did they all go? This is, oh, show all windows. There it is. So we're going to have a lot more to say about this next week, but I'll shrink it a bit so you can see it all on one screen. So these are the four levels that he refers to in the seven valleys, in the Valley of Unity. And we will be learning these Arabic terms. Lahut is the world of the heavenly court. It's characterized, its time is eternity, and it has neither a beginning nor an end of which is visible. Jabarut is the world of the Empyrean heaven. It's got perpetuity, which is different than eternity, because its beginning is not to be seen, but which is known to have an end. Malakut, which we've been talking about quite a bit, and this is actually the imaginal realm, is the kingdom of the angels, and it is characterized by duration. So it has a beginning, but whose end is not revealed. And then Nasut, which is where we live, is the mortal world, characterized by time, which has both a beginning and an end. As I say, we're going to add one level to make 5, and that's going to be our topic next week. It's the central piece, if you like, of the whole course. Now, according to one of the early Sufis, Al-Maki, who died in 996, there are 5 divine presences. He added the essence of God to the top of the list mentioned by Baha'u'llah in the 7 valleys. So at the top above Lahut, he's got Hahut, which is the Godhead, the essence, the absolute reality. So that's the essence of God of which we can know nothing. Then in his view, Lahut was the reality of being, namely the divinity or the personal God. So you could think of the first one as the transcendent God, and then the second one as the immanent God, the one that you can have a relationship with. Jabarut was the world of the angels in his view. Malakut was the subtle world, the world of the dominion, which is the Alamo Mithal. And finally, Nasut is the corporeal or human world, the world of the kingdom as it's known. So, much more about that next week. Okay, let me stop this one. So there's a 7-layered cosmology that is frequently mentioned by the Bab. It was first mentioned in an Islamic tradition attributed to the 6th Imam, Jafar as-Sadiq. Okay, back to this screen sharing, and let's see if I can bring up the 7 level. Okay, where is it? There it is. I've got so many documents open. 7 levels in the Bab's writings. I got this from The Gate of the Heart by Saidi. This tradition was extensively treated in the writings of Sheikh Ahmad al-Aqsai and Sayyid Kazim al-Rashdi, the first 2 leaders of the Shaykhi tradition. Baha'u'llah also discusses these stages. However, it is the Bab who examines them in the greatest depth. As with every other theological concept he considers, he redefines it and imbues it with new meaning. Here is a passage in which he harkens back to this source. Sorry, I have to, I think I have to stop sharing and start sharing in order to bring up the readings again. Okay, so number 21 now. How about Hangame for number 21?
Thus, the descent of the divine command furnisheth 7 stages. Hence the Imam said, nothing can exist, whether on earth or in heaven, except through the 7 stages of creation: will, determination, destiny, decree, permission, term, and book. Whoso denieth the necessity of even one of these stages hath repudiated God's truth.
Thank you. So as stages of the arc of descent, as identified by the Bab, are first, the will; second, determination; third, destiny; fourth, decree; fifth, permission; sixth, term; and seventh, book. So I really recommend that if you're interested in this subject, take a look at Logos and Civilization and Gate of the Heart. Both of them have information about these 7. But as far as I can tell, very few scholars have, at least in European languages, tackled this subject yet. And I think that's partly because the shaky writings are not really available in translation yet. So this is going to be a jackpot for somebody, maybe a PhD or 2. It will be very useful. One important feature distinguishes the Baha'i concept of the ontological circle from the typical Sufi or Neoplatonic ideas. In the Baha'i writings, the stations of creation in the arc of descent do not start from the divine essence itself, but from the realm of the divine will, the primal will. Similarly, the arc of ascent or the spiritual journey does not end in union with the essence of God, but in union with the will of God, the primal will. Okay, let's see here. Is David Oak still there?
David Oak is definitely here.
Fantastic. How about number 22 for us, David?
Sure. I'm sorry. I was just having a little snack while listening.
Oh.
22nd, did you say?
Yes, please.
Sure. Here goes. The primal will is also referred to as the command or the word of God, and as such refers to the common reality or essence of the manifestations of God, because they are the vehicle for the transmission of the grace and of the divinity itself, through which every man will advance and develop until he attaineth the station in which he can manifest all the potential forces with which his inmost true self hath been endowed. The goal of the spiritual journey is recognition of and union with the will of the manifestation of God.
All the potential forces with which his inmost true self hath been endowed. So that's a reference back to the trust of God that each of us has, yes, that we have to somehow figure out how to access. In his book of Justice, the Bab explains that God created the primal will from nothing, quote, through the causation of the will itself without any external determination. That's one of the most mysterious statements in the writings, as far as I'm concerned. So it wasn't, I think what he's trying to say is that the essence of God did not create the primal will. The primal will created itself. Get your head around that one. The primal will then created all other beings through its own causation, through the 7 stages of contingency that we've just been looking at of the Babs: will, determination, destiny, decree, permission, term, and book. The heart of these 7 stages of creation is the unity of existence and essence. All created things have both existence and essence. Let me see, 23. Okay, Linda O'Neill. You've been waiting patiently all night.
Okay. Sorry, 23?
Yes, please.
Okay. From the point of view of the created entity, existence points toward the creator and the divine effulgence, which is the created entity's source, while essence points toward the entity's self and its thingness. Put another way, existence is a being's active aspect, while essence is its receptive side. The stage of will affirms the thing's existence, whereas determination affirms its essence. However, for a thing to be, existence and essence must interact and unite. Destiny is the stage that designates this interaction and unity. Thus, the three stages of will, determination, and destiny mark the fundamental preconditions for any stage to come into being. Well, that's an easy one.
Oh, yeah. You're going to explain it?
Not tonight.
Let's see if we can clarify the first three stages of divine creation. I want to pop back to the other document, which is the 7 stages. Now, can you see that, or did I do something wrong? Linda, do you see the 7 stages on the
I can
screen?
see the up down to stage 7 now, but you might be able to pull it up a smidgen. That's good. Whoop.
Yeah. Whoop. Okay.
Good.
So here are the Bob stages, 1 to 7, with their English and Arabic terms. So in the passage that we just read from Saidi, he was saying that the will corresponds to existence. And this is wujud that Ibn Arabi talked about. So the determination refers to the essence, which is the, what's the term again? This is the thing that we are known by God as before we have being given to us. Before wujud is given to us, we're known by God as our essence. And then the interaction and unity of these two are combined into this third stage called destiny. It's by the first two being put together that this third one is born. So once these 3 stages have descended and been realized, it is the business of the 4th stage to confirm the previous 3. I don't understand it. That's as much as I've been able to gather from the writings that I've been able to access. This is where I would really love to be able to read Arabic. And then the last 3 stages finalize the creative process. So God has to consent to these first 4 stages actually coming into being. And I think that's when God says, be, and it is. And then this 6th is determining how long this particular being is going to be available on planet Earth or wherever they happen to be. And then the book is the registration of all the details pertaining to the particular being or event. I don't know. Again, I don't know what that really means. So maybe, I'm hoping Durham maybe knows more about this than I do, or somebody else in the audience.
In Islam, for example, they say there's an angel will be in charge of each human being born on this earth, and they write all the deeds of that individual from birth to death. And this last thing shows similarity, the registration of all details pertaining to particular being. What did they do, and so on. And according to this, God will hold us to account as to what we have done and what we didn't do. And so this is one thing.
Okay, that's useful.
Number 6, I guess it's clear, it means the term, how many years person will live. But you see, it's interesting. We say that knowing about something is not the reason of its happening. You know what I mean? For example, if God has put a term for someone, but the person who's using his or her will in life, God knows this person will die on this day, but God did not cause the death of this individual. That individual, with his or her free will, chose to go through one line to cause death. It's like you're standing on top of a mountain and you're watching cars going in a loop up. And one fellow is driving on the left lane and making the curve. You will see from top, this fellow is going to hit the other car coming from above. But it was not you who's watching caused that accident, it's us. Anyway, so this is, again, another way of looking at this. But
Mark, I agree with you that this is going to be a rich topic. I'm assuming that Nader Saidi got this stuff out of the writings of the Bab that haven't been translated yet, that he didn't, this is not his own theory.
No.
I'm presuming that's what he did, and that this has been explained somewhere by the Bab. But it's the first time I've seen an explanation, and it's a good one, of these 7 stages. But Baha'u'llah didn't seem to favor this. He seemed to favor the 5 stages because he quotes them, as you pointed out, in the 7 Valleys and the Tablet of All Food, and he endorses them. So while this may be interesting to scholars, it doesn't seem that Baha'u'llah carried this forward into the Baha'i revelation. I mean, all the concepts may be there, but the only thing that I've noticed so far in Baha'u'llah's writings, and of course I haven't read the untranslated ones, is that he likes the Hahut, Lahut, Jabarut, Malakut, and Nasut scheme. Because he uses it, he refers to it in the 7 Valleys and also the Tablet of All Food, which is about 20 pages long, and those 5 stages come up near the beginning of the tablet.
In fact, that's our topic next week.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. You read my mind ahead of time. It's interesting.
Well, I'm working on the same stuff at the moment.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to dwell on this too long, but just to give you an idea that there is this 7-level version. So it's important to realize that these 7 stages of creation are all activities of the primal will. In the Bab's description of these stages, the stage of will, the first one, this guy, corresponds to existence. In the writings of both Sheikh Ahmad and the Bab, the word shay, which means thing or object, is taken to be derived from the word, from the root shah, meaning he willed, which is also the root of the word mashiyat, which means will. This is important both in terms of philosophy and mysticism. The thing or object is actually an event of the will. Jennifer, are you awake? I haven't heard from you yet tonight. If so, I would like you to read, what is the number here? Number 24.
The objective world, then, is conceptualized not as a mechanistic, solid materiality, but as the expression of spiritual force or energy, an embodiment of the divine will. In this connection, we may note Baha'u'llah's statement in his Lahi Kimat, Tablet of Wisdom, that nature in its essence is the embodiment of my name, the Maker, the Creator. Nature is God's will and is its expression in and through the contingent world.
So I have a feeling this is going to be very important for scientists in the future. Because here you have the expression of reality being energy, right? Which is a current theory. So when we finally get to having a bridge built between science and religion, I think a passage like this is going to be very important for both sides. The assertion that will is existence and that determination is essence is confirmed in another statement of the Bab in the Risala Fiorina. There he explains that the reality of all created things depends on two aspects. The existential aspect, which is wujud, which signifies the divine effulgence, and the other aspect, the essential, the mahiyat, which signifies servitude and the acceptance of the divine effulgence. So remember that the Arabic term for effulgence is tajalli. Both this term and wujud were used extensively by Ibn Arabi, as we've seen over the last couple of months. Through the realization of both these aspects, the link of destiny, which connects the two, becomes manifest. After the appearance of these three stages, the other four are realized, for the descent of the three is impossible save through the appearance of the four. This, he says, is the reason for the 7 stages of creation. Okay. So in his writings, particularly in the Persian Bayan, the Bab provides us with a second representation of the ontological circle. Let me see if I can pull this one up here. Where did it go? There it is. So here are the first 4 on the right-hand side: the will, determination, destiny, and decree. And on the arc of ascent on the other side, we go from the inner body to the soul, to the spirit, to the heart. In this version, the arc of descent is limited to the first 4 stages of creation. While the arc of ascent is comprised of 4 equivalent stages of spiritual growth. These he identifies as inner or essential body, self or soul, spirit, and heart. 2 of these spiritual stages, the self or soul and the heart, are identical with 2 of the valleys in Baha'u'llah's 4 valleys. The most important point to note is that in both classifications, the ultimate point is the same, the heart. These 7 stages of divine creation are thus not just metaphysical concepts that explains how the process by which the world and each of its objects was created by the primal will. It also describes the arc of descent as the process of creating a new spiritual civilization through the historical stages of progressive revelation. At the same time, the arc of ascent, or the concept of the return, may be defined as the historical unfoldment and renewal of divine revelation and the advent of a new paradise in human history. The recognition of the manifestation of God becomes the center of this historical arc of ascent. Let me just go back to the let's see here. Bonnie, could you read 25 for us?
Certainly. In the context of this Baha'i theological paradigm, destiny or measure refers to the particular form of the religion of God which is revealed by the primal will, in accordance with the requirements of the time and the level of human development by a particular manifestation of God.
So you can see here, we've got the three stages: the primal will, which is the will, then the limitations of the time and the stage that human beings have reached, which is determination. And then the particular manifestation of God is the decree in this 7-stage version of reality. So I want to end that part now, but just to say that this is a topic that I think has got a tremendous amount of hidden information for us that will be very illuminating in the future once we get the original texts to look at. But for now, it seems a bit opaque, I have to admit. But that's our limitations, not the Bob's.
Mark,
Yes.
it's Linda O here.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. What is the inner body in the ontological circle?
My sense would be that that is the subtle body that you'd see in some of the other religions. It would probably correspond, I think, in the language we've been using, to the imaginal realm or the dream body.
Oh, okay.
That type of thing.
And you also mentioned the soul and the self together. Did I hear you correctly?
Yes, you did. I'm just going to pull up the diagram again. Just a second. Where did it go? Now, my feeling is that, I think it was Saidi who mentioned the self and the soul. Yes, it was in Logos and Civilization. Personally, I would want to keep the word self and reserve it for the topic we were talking about earlier tonight, the treasure that we've been given. That spark, that divine spark. And its relationship to the heart is not quite clear to me, but I think they may be the same. I'm really out there on the limits of my knowledge at this point. So if anybody else has more to share on that topic, I'd be delighted to hear.
I think Sheikh Ahmed talks about the subtle body or the ethereal body, doesn't he, Mark, that you recall?
That could well be, yes. Jasadi Dhati is the term that is given for that in Arabic by Saidi. So these terms need definition. There's no question about it. We need to have some real texts of the manifestation in order to be able to firm up some of the concepts here, because the chances are that they're using these words in ways that we don't use in our regular language, that you have to be able to look at their texts and see, oh, that's how they're interpreting these words.
Mark, there's a question or comment from Carol.
Okay, please.
It's just when I'm looking at the heart, like I understand a little bit more about what it means to, get involved with suffering, bringing us down, boiling us down into our essence, and then populating us with dreams, populating us with the imaginal, with insights, populating us with the obligation for obligatory prayer, the obligation for learning about the imaginal and learning about that inner heaven that we all possess, that spark. So you can see why suffering has to play a part.
Mm-hmm. It's a lubricant almost. So let me just finish off. I've only got a couple of things left here. In some answered questions and in his commentary on the Surah of Rum, which we'll look at in classes 11 and 12, Abdu'l-Baha enhanced the 5-level cosmology, which was Hahut, Lahut, Jabarut, Malakut, and Nasut, by dividing the last one, Nasut, into 4 subdivisions. And you can see them here on this chart: the human being, the animal kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, and the mineral kingdom. And that gives you a total of 8 distinct levels. So I have a handout with that one. Just hang on a sec, I'll bring it up. 8 levels, here they are. And then for the sake of completion, Sheikh Ahmed Al-Aqsai, one of the 2 heralds of the faith of the Bab, described more than 10 alternative classifications of the levels of being. But not knowing Arabic, I do not have access to the details of this model. So that, in a nutshell, is the answer to the question of how many levels are there in the cosmological Baha'i cake. It just depends on how you look at it. Okay, let me stop sharing and give everybody a chance to chat. Comment, question. Heather, yes, please.
Right. Okay. Looking at the 4 worlds of God, perpetuity, and it says whose beginning is not to be seen, but which is known to have an end. To me, perpetuity means like I'm giving you water rights into perpetuity. So it has a beginning, but doesn't have an end, or an end that we can see anyway. And duration, to me, has a beginning and it has an end, like the duration of a note in music, the duration of a lease for a car. You know, it has a set. So I'm just wondering why those English words were used, because they don't have, like, to me, time, to me, duration, what they have there, like, to me, duration would be better for Zaman, duration, because it has both a beginning and an end.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I suspect what's happening is we're using the limited language we have in English to describe something which is much subtler in Arabic.
Okay.
As this is a case where we really need to see the texts that this is coming from to get a clearer sense of what they're saying, so that we understand the Bab's version of what those words mean, rather than ours imposing our limited views on him.
Yeah, but Heather's example of perpetuity is a good one, because in a graveyard, if you get perpetual care, right, that care starts at a given point of time.
Right.
It's not supposed to end.
Yeah, but the company's probably going to go out of business at some point. So,
but it's the time that we can't see, right? Like, you know, like, I don't know, the French in Montreal probably gave the seniors, the seigneuries, you know, a perpetual water rights for the mills and stuff, right? But not knowing that at one time in the future, there would be a shopping center there. You know, it's, you know, like it's the future you can see really is perpetuity.
By the way, time in philosophy, the philosophers have said, is one of the most abstruse and difficult things to philosophize about. It's a really difficult topic.
No kidding. I've stayed away from that like the plague, to tell you the truth.
Well, time was a god. Kronos, you know, Kronos was one of the Olympians. So that's where we get our word chronology from that Greek god Kronos. And that he was a god because, you know, the Greeks realized that everything depends on time. So he was up there on Mount Olympus.
Okay, I see hands for Carolyn and for Durham. I'm not sure if there are others, but Carolyn, go ahead.
Speaking of time, it's very interesting. In this same tablet of the Valley of True Poverty, it says, in all the journeys, the traveler must stray not the breadth of hair from the law and follow the secret of the path. And it says, these journeys have no visible ending in the world of time, but the severed wayfarer, if invisible confirmation descend upon him and the guardian of the cause assist him, may cross these 7 stages in 7 steps, nay rather in 7 breaths, nay rather in a single breath, if God will and desire it. And this is of his grace on such of his servants as he pleases. So there we go with time. Huh? It's very clear. I guess it depends all upon God and his will for us.
Well, yeah, so what I think that's referring to, Carolyn, is the fact that spiritual practice in life occurs over a lifetime once you become a believer. So in that sense, spiritual practice takes place over time, a long time. But my understanding of what Baha'u'llah is saying there is if the grace of God touches you, you can do a huge jump and just jump over all those stages in time. And that's what the mystical world is all about. And you can just arrive there out of time, so to speak.
His grace.
Through his grace, yes.
But whether it's a permanent state is another question. Or whether it's just a teaser.
Exactly. And often it's just a teaser.
Durham, you had a question or point.
Two comments. We read something about the ring stone, the Baha'i ring stone.
Yes.
Where you mentioned there are 3 levels. But just for those who don't know the letters, there is 1 letter line, vertical line connecting the 3. The letter B in Arabic, just for information. Okay, and refers to Baha'u'llah. This is the, and the second thing I wanted to mention, Jack asked about the difference in names and attributes of God. In Islam, the 99 names, they are names and they are attributes same time. So they don't differentiate between the attributes and names. They are the names. Thank you.
And my understanding of the so-called difference between the names and the attributes is that the names are really the nouns, whereas the attributes are the adjectives associated with those nouns. So each of them has both. But it may be more common for us to know the noun or to know the adjective.
Yeah, Dergam's point is a good one, but my point was that it's not necessarily like that in the Baha'i faith. To me, they seem to be 2 different things. As you said, Mark, if you go by the grammatical framework, one would be a noun, one would be an adjective. God in action, so to speak.
Yeah, but Jack and Mark, I remember the Bob himself. This is one of the things about language. He was saying that language has to be spiritualized, and that nouns represent one thing. The verbs are central because they act. It have to do with action, and so verbs, nouns, adjectives all have different meanings with respect to spiritual reality. And in a sense, so you can just imagine when it comes to writing and when it comes to speech, if this were understood, that would transform language itself. And anyway, it's I find it very interesting. In fact, I would go so far as to say that from this point of view, the attributes of God are enshrined in language.
But what do you mean by that?
I don't know. No, no. Well, I'll tell you. There was a time when I was studying a book by Kumaraswamy on the art of India, and he like in original Sanskrit, all of the basic concepts, all of the concepts in Sanskrit refer to spiritual realities. And this is something that, for example, in English and in other languages today, that sense of spiritual or divine has been lost in language today, and it has to come back.
Right.
But yeah, so that in music, in art, in sculpture, in India, the description, the actions are all described in spiritual terms.
Well, you can interpret all of the parts of speech, David, as you're suggesting, in a divine way. For example, the copula verb, the verb to be.
Yeah.
That's about existence. Verbs are about action. So if you theologize the thing, you can say, well, what are God's actions or action words? So, and you can go on with that. I started to sketch out a paper on that I never finished years ago, but the Quran says that God, gave the gift of speech to mankind. So it's obviously a divine gift, divine in origin. So all of the parts of speech, actually, if you interpret them in a spiritual way, they can all have theological meanings. They do have theological meanings.
Yeah, but it also if we see, look, there's also everything has an inner reality as well as an outer. And so it's the same thing with language. For example, there are key concepts in any language, but particularly in the English language. If you go to the etymological meaning, the original meaning of key concepts in the language, you will find that the picture image, so to speak, of the original meaning is very different from ordinary speech. And that's what I'm saying, is that we don't know anymore. We don't know anymore what words, what they actually mean. We think we do, but we don't, in terms of their deeper and spiritual meaning.
True, but there's a lot to be said for considerations of the evolution of language and the interpenetration of one language into another. So what's going on at the moment, for instance, with the extensive intercommunications between all the different languages, is that we're faced with a situation where we're going to have to do what Baha'u'llah has suggested and choose a language or create a new one, so that we all use the same basic terminology so that we can understand each other. And at that point, that would be a perfect time to invest those words with spiritual knowledge.
Yeah.
That deep background. that the experts in languages will be able to provide us with at that time. But I got to cut you off because I know that Bill has a question for us before we go. We're almost out of time.
Actually, it's been covered.
Oh,
you guys thoroughly smashed it.
Oh, you don't want to come up with another question?
If you
Come on,
guys,
Bill, this is your chance.
we could take this party for a long time, you know.
Anybody else? Oh my goodness, that was a stressful situation tonight, wasn't it? That was tough dealing with all those charts.
It was totally terrible.
Yeah. But it was about Baha'i faith, which is the first time, right? So that's good. Next week, we're going to talk about the tablet of all food. And I'm hoping you'll find that one illuminating with any luck.
Do we bring a fridge and an oven?
And then the last 2 weeks will be devoted to Abdu'l-Baha and his commentary on the Surah of Rum.
Right.
Is the real reason I did this whole course, to get us to that place.
A quick question about the tablet of all foods.
Yes.
This keeps coming up again and again and again. So I'm wondering why there's no official translation of it.
That's an excellent question. I have no idea.
I mean, not just in this course, I mean, all over the place I hear about it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, fortunately, you have a provisional translation, which is fairly good. But I don't know what the thinking of the Universal House of Justice is on that. They're the ones that make these decisions.
Well, what happened there was the person who was a Bobby, I forget the name, it's in my notes, but it's a commentary originally on a Quranic verse, all food was permitted to the children of Israel except for what Jacob forbade. And there's a bit more to the revelation. Anyway, this Bobby, whose name I forgot, wanted an explanation and asked Baha'u'llah, and he passed it over to Yahya.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we know who he was. But this Bobby was so disappointed in Yahya's response that he went back to Baha'u'llah, and then Baha'u'llah revealed the tablet, and he was so thrilled with it that he recognized the station of Baha'u'llah before he declared. And Baha'u'llah told him, you must keep this messianic secret until the appointed time. So that's the background. I mean, and people would expect it would be about dietary laws, right? But no, it wasn't about dietary laws at all. Baha'u'llah gave an esoteric interpretation to it, which is in those 5 levels come up in it. So it was, if somebody expected a legal definition about what food was permitted and what wasn't, that's not how he answered it at all. He answered it from a mystical point of view, just like as Mark is going to tell us on Abdu'l-Baha's commentary on the Surah of Rum.
And it's interesting that this particular tablet that you're referring to was, I believe, the first one where he answered a direct question from a person who wasn't a Baha'i or a follower of his. And this was just before he went to Suleymaniya.
I think it was revealed the first year he was in Baghdad, actually.
But from what I've read, it was the first one that he revealed.
As an answer to a question. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So it's important from that aspect too. Well, if there are no other questions, I think we're done. For a whole nother week, you get to relax for a week.
Yeah, Belinda has one question.
Oh, Belinda, okay.
It's not a question, it's an extension of what David was saying. I don't know why he didn't bring this up himself. When he was talking about root percepts in words, going back into the origin of our language, which is basically Indo-European. He sat down one night and told me about the word earth.
Oh, yeah.
Aorta, heart, worth. That was a whole cup of earth. earth, aorta, worth, heart, they're all from the same origin.
They have the same root.
They all have the same root. So this is an example of a very concrete word having to do with earth, and having extensive meanings in other directions. And I mean, you think about, I had an opportunity to look at a list of Sanskrit words, and I could see them right away. One of them was just exactly that, aorta, with another element added to it, which meant heartlessness in this particular context. And I wanted to add, by the way, that I've been involved for the last few years with a small yoga group that's run by a very elderly gentleman who was has an extensive family history as well as life history with as a swami or teacher of yoga, and he keeps talking about something like the Sufis, God being part of everything. And yet I don't believe he's actually pantheistic in this respect. He seems to be talking about how everything because God creates everything, everything has to be part of God, more like that. But it's a little similar to what the Sufis sometimes say.
Well, Belinda, if he's a Hindu, I don't know if he's a Hindu, but of course that pantheism is part of Hinduism. You know, the famous formula, Atman is Brahman, the self is Brahman, the self is God.
I do. Yeah, he talks about that, but he also talks about, he also expresses it in a way that makes it seem not to be exactly pantheistic. It's hard to describe, but
he would say that we are all Atman.
Yeah, that's what Jack just said.
Yeah,
But,
Jack. Yeah, we
yeah.
are all Atman.
But what he's saying does not exclude. Well, I'm not going to go any further into that. It's really confusing.
That's the kind of thing I'm working on right now. That's why I need an extra month. It's so confusing.
If you'd like to chat with this fellow, I can arrange it. But he's a very elderly and charming man.
Hmm.
Or worse. I don't know why.
Well, I'm not ready for that yet. Sorry, I don't know enough.
Oh, that's okay. I don't know anything, and I could. Well, never mind.
But,
okay, folks, that's it.
Good
Let's
night.
take care of yourself.
Hey, everybody. Thank you
Good
very
week.
much. It's been great tonight.
Thanks. Great to see everybody.
Good to see you all zooming
Bye-bye.
in Zoomland.
Bye.
Thanks to our pilot, Linda.
Yes, indeed.
Linda's a fabulous.
My pleasure.
She's
Certainly
quite a good-looking pilot, isn't she? now?
Lovely to see everybody.
Hasta luego.
Okay, take care.
Fun in the sun, David.
Hasta la
Fun in the
vista.
sun. And no coffee down there, David, eh?
No coffee, no tea, no sugar, no flour.
Real
7
diet.
weeks.
Okay,
My
guys.
arc of ascent.
See you, Eva. Take care.
See you guys.
Yes, bye.
Thank
Have a
you.
great walk.